So here's part two of how they defrauded us with the Abu Dhabi Steward's appeal. This all part of the facade. Now, we all think that we're not susceptible to being duped. Okay. And often in life, when you're being duped, when you're being defrauded, you don't realize that you're being defrauded. Okay. That's how they get away with it. And you only find out later. And then you're like, oh, I've been done there. Yeah, because if you thought that you're being done at the time, you stop and you challenge it and you make sure you're not being done. Yeah, so it's only after that you realise, yeah, yeah. We'll come to that though, because that's for future videos. You often see them these days, don't you? You often see them these days whereby, um, did this happen to you all these many years ago? You might be eligible for. Don't you worry about that yet. Don't you worry about that. Let Formula One worry about that. Okay, that's for them to worry about the future consequences. And I don't want the lawyers, the ambulance chasing lawyers, to think, cha-ching, there's an opportunity there. Many, many steps ahead of you. Many, many steps ahead. Don't you worry, your little heads. Anyway, we're talking about how to um, how to present something to the people that the people are going to believe as to be authentic. And one of them things is, oh, if you dress it up as being legal, oh yeah, we don't understand. It's all too complicated because law, the rules of life that we've got to supposedly live by, that we're all expected to abide by. But as soon as there's a problem, you won't understand it. You need legal advice. That's the way it is. They sell this facade, and you'll go to a lawyer and you'll explain a situation, and they'll go, "Ooh, well, it's very complicated because it could be this and it could be that, and yeah, you could find it could be like this, and I'm gonna muddy the waters and gaslight you to sell my service to you to demonstrate to you just how valuable I am." That's what they do. They're salesmen, really. And the reality is, all you've got to do is drill down to the facts of the situation and determine the difference between right and wrong in the context of a given situation, and have a competent, non-corrupt judge be willing to recognise the authenticity of the information presented, and again determine the difference between right and wrong in the context of a given situation, rather than corruptly contrive an outcome. And that happens. But that'll be for probably a different channel, because I've got too many wank boys on this channel to expose to people the reality of the world that we live in. And that kind of content is far too serious for this. But bear in mind, lawyers, everybody can get a lawyer. Al Capone, a famous gangster. A famous gangster. You see, of the day, Al Capone would have been the equivalent of a billionaire of the day, perhaps. Okay, he'd got a lawyer that would represent him, kept his client out of jail for a long time, and was richly rewarded with a mansion. But the trouble is, when you mix in those circles, somebody, you might get assassinated one day. This isn't me threatening. I'm just saying, when you mix in those circles, they shut people up. That's what happens. So have a read about this lad here that's a lawyer for the mob. Anyway, talking about lawyers for the mob, let's have a look who Mercedes sent into the steward's appeal. The team's legal counsel, Paul Harris there. Paul Harris here from the Mockton Chambers. Here's Paul, here he is. Look, I told you in part one, Paul's credentials. The testimonies telling you how magnificent the Emperor's new clothes are, and just how intelligent Paul is. Yes, Paul Harris, King's Counsel, expert in the law that you won't understand. Even though you've got to abide by the law, you won't understand it. You'll need Paul to represent you, to advocate for you, speak on your behalf, because you can't speak on your own behalf. You're just a silly little litigant, aren't you? You know nothing. You know nothing. You need Paul's assistance. Anyway, Mercedes didn't know anything either. Toto, the team principal, Toto's not capable of articulating himself in these set of circumstances. He needed to employ the services of Paul Harris KC. This was all part of the facade. Remember back to Abu Dhabi 2021. We'd got the juggler, Craig Slater. I'm sure it was him, okay? If you tied his hands behind his back, I'm not sure he'd be able to speak. I think he'd become mute, okay? But I think it was Slater that was saying, you see, Red Bull have made a statement saying we came here to race, but Mercedes have come here to try and win it off the track in a court of law. Some shit like that, wasn't it? That was all part of the winding up the strap-on fanboy to give it their Nelson. Ha 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 ha. Incite the conflict. Incite the conflict. Mercedes, we came here to race. Mercedes have came here with their team of lawyers. Yeah? Yes. Now, let's look back to what happened. Abu Dhabi 2021, the race director broke the rules of the sport to contrive the final lap that should never have taken place. Had the rules have been followed, mandatory regulations that are there for a purpose, had they have been followed, that race will have absolutely, without any shadow of doubt, ended behind the safety car. That's the way the things operate. They presented to us there could have been alternate endings of this race. They could have restarted the race with lapped cars in situ. No, absolute fallacy. Now, this was the previous video when I talked about Max Verstappen overtaking under that safety car, which in itself is an infringement. This is the situation. As the Nicholas Latifi's car at turn 14 is being cleared away and they're clearing the track, this is how the field of competitors ultimately bunched. And what you end up in is this running order first, followed by then Lando Norris is now up to 7th place after Perez mysteriously retired. And they're saying, oh, we could have restarted like this, but that wouldn't have been exciting, would it? Because Max would have been all this way back here, at least 3 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. All right, you can't restart like that. And the reason you can't restart like that they don't tell you, is that prior to Latifi crashing, because this is Latifi and Schumacher here, let's play.
A great recovery because they felt they've been hampered coming into this season by those slight regulation changes.
Wow, that feels like a long time.
Oh no, Nicholas Latifi has crashed because his blue dot has just come to a standstill. And at that moment in time, you've got Lando Norris here trying to catch and then hopefully pass, if you're Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly. Again, at that stage, Lando Norris is in 8th position, looking to try and catch 7th and 6th, earn World Championship points, with the intention of finishing 5th in the Drivers' Championship, which would have been his highest finishing position that season. He was on course to do so when running in 5th in that race, prior to having to comply with the tyre narrative and pretend he'd got a slow puncture. That's my guess. It all came about 10 laps from the end when Christian Horner is on the radio asking for his miracle. Yes, we need some help from the racing gods. We need a miracle. And what's going on now? Lando Norris is coming into the pits with a tyre problem. It completely throws your mind all over the place, from here to there, to here to there. This is what they do. They disorientate you. They keep your brain guessing, don't they? So was that complying with the narrative, McLaren? Is that why you're now are the team that's benefiting at this stage, doing better than the works Mercedes team with that Mercedes engine? Let me know what you think in the comments section, Zach Brown. Anyway, Lando Norris is trying to catch Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda. The time gap is, let's have a look on the data view.
So yes.
Yes, let's have a look. So Lando Norris is 11.1 seconds behind Pierre Gasly. Okay, registered being a lap down, but that's because when he went into the pits, Hamilton went by the pit exit and then emerged Lando Norris, essentially becoming a lap down when he had to pit for those tyres. Okay, but then Lando came out in 10th, passed Ocon, passed Alonso, and was trying to chase Gasly. 11.1 seconds behind Gasly. Verstappen here is 11.9 seconds behind Hamilton. You don't want to see Lando Norris catch up to Gasly and Lando Norris try and see if he can overtake Gasly, do you? No, you don't care about that. You only care about wiping out this 12 seconds and putting Max on a new set of fresh tyres and see if we can set up the turkey shoot. Shoot the fish in the bowl. You like that. That excites you, doesn't it? Yay! That's what you wanted to see. But back to tracker view because it's easier to see like this.
Doesn't it? So yes, Mercedes.
Yes, Nicholas Latifi.
Had an awful pre-season test, didn't they? We thought they would be in terrible trouble come the first race.
Oh no, Nicholas Latifi.
Oh no, oh no! It all starts. The biggest oh no moment was when the front brake caught fire because that completely knackered everything up. Okay, were it not for that, the chances are you could have got that car recovered, and so that this procedure, the mandatory procedure, would have been carried out in time to set up that final racing lap. And had that have happened, you'd have probably gotten away with it. You'd have probably gotten away with it because the likelihood is, well, there's no evidence, is there? Then all it would have been speculation. Well, the evidence that would have been there would have been Nicholas Latifi's race engineer telling Nicholas Latifi that, oh, it has to be this lap, Nicholas. It has to be this lap, Nicholas. What has to be this lap? You know, you get the strap-on fanboy go, oh, he was just telling him that he had to overtake Mick Schumacher this lap. That was his last chance. Well, that doesn't make sense because with 5 laps to go to Latifi, because although he was on lap 52, he's a lap down, and when the leader crosses the finish line, Latifi stays a lap down and only completes the lap that he's currently on. Okay, so he doesn't carry on going around the track for another lap that he's not done. That's just the way it works. So he got 5 laps to go, and if that was his last chance to overtake, why would that have been? Was it because the state of his tyres are going off, so he was only going to lose performance from there onwards? Was it that his battery power was depleting and therefore he wasn't going to have the extra electrical power to give him that extra power to make that overtake? Well, if it's going that bad, then do you have the power to defend the counter when Mick Schumacher tries to re-overtake you in those remaining 5 laps? See, it doesn't make sense, does it? It has to be this lap, Nicholas. And so what Nicholas and Mick Schumacher do, they put on the Facade. You know, Toto Wolff. I'm not saying Toto Wolff is the Al Capone of this, but if you do work for a gangster, Paul, all I'm saying is Toto Wolff supplies the engines to the Williams team and was a part owner of that Williams team. Toto Wolff employed Mick Schumacher as his reserve driver. Toto Wolff supplies engines to the McLaren team that suffered a slow puncture in that event. This is just me being a conspiracy theorist. I'm not just saying what factually is happening and saying you're just making random links here, aren't you? No, I'm just telling you what happened. Anyway, Nicholas Latifi and of the Williams team and Mick Schumacher, who's got ties with Toto Wolff. But he didn't at the time. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, they choreographed a lovely little dance coming down towards turn 9. He pushed me off though, and then they come round there. Nicholas gets his dirty tyres, and with them dirty tyres, knowing you've gone off track, knowing the tyre narrative of dirty tyres and less grip, Nicholas decides to come round turn 14 this time, in lower grip conditions, in a lower gear, and dumps the throttle. Now, if you've driven a rear-wheel drive car and you want to spin up them back tyres, how do you do it? Let me know what you think in the comments section. Perhaps you select a lower gear and you dump the throttle. And if you've got a steering angle on at that moment in time, your back end comes around on you. But as a professional Formula One racing driver who spent years racing motor cars and therefore has built up a degree of car control, you wouldn't know that, would you? You wouldn't have a clue that that might be happening. It was just a human error of Nicholas Latifi. Anyway, he's crashed. Oh no. What are we doing now? We are discussing now the rules and regulations of the sport that Michael Massey knew, demonstrated on 4 occasions, the procedure that he carried out. Well, he demonstrated on multiple occasions, far more than 4. But the 4 that I'm going to identify are the 4 where not only did he carry out that mandatory procedure, Michael Massey utilised his discretion, his overriding authority, the 15.3, to keep that safety car out on track for yet a further lap beyond the mandatory lap afforded to those release cars, so that those release cars fully caught the back of the pack to restore sporting fairness to all competitors prior to the resumption of that race. Michael Massey did that himself 4 times. Brazil 2019, Spain 2019, Turkey 2020, and Eiffel 2020, I believe it was, something like that. I've done plenty of videos on that. If Formula One hasn't blocked them or tried to have them stricken down due to utilising their content to demonstrate their fraud. Their crimes cannot be demonstrated using their copyrighted material that they own. We contrived it and you're not allowed to use it against us, say Formula One. Let us know what your lawyers think about that formula. Oh, you all are lawyers. You all are lawyers. So maybe you'll know. You don't need to go and buy legal advice because you already know, don't you? Because you're all experts of the law, aren't you? Or maybe you've got friends that's a judge and you can get the judge to create a ruling for you. Yeah, that's the way the law works, isn't it? I'm not saying everything's corrupt, just quite a lot of things. There are a few people of integrity. It's just finding them. We'll get there. Anyway, what you're seeing on track at the moment there is Lewis Hamilton, the leader. You've got Norris, Alonso, Ocon and Verstappen. You've got Norris here trying to chase down Gasly. Okay, currently 8th, trying to chase down 7th. But oh no, Nicholas Latifi's crashed. The upshot of Nicholas Latifi crashing and them deploying the safety car is we end up with this situation here. Will they let the lap runners through? Because we want to get them out of the way. We need to get these lapped cars out of the way of the race between the leaders. That's the narrative you've been fed, which is a bullshit narrative. It's nothing to do with getting them out of the way. They all still matter. There's a reason that they still matter. There's this thing called the International Sporting Code. Okay, and that says here, so that the above powers may be exercised in a fair and equitable manner, the FIA has drawn up the International Sporting Code, which includes all appendices thereto. The purpose of the code is to regulate, encourage and facilitate motorsport, not motor show, okay? We have motor shows, this is motorsport, okay? Fair contest, okay? Contest that's conducted in accordance with rules and regulations that apply to all competitors that are competing in that contest. That's what a sport is, okay? A show, okay, something like wrestling, a demonstration based on a script is not a sport, okay? Hence, you don't have Sky Sports wrestling. No, that's on an entertainment channel, okay? So Sky Sports, the fact that you market this as a sport, okay, if it's not a sport, that results in something that, oh, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it because then these lawyers will go ching. There's an opportunity there. Which lawyers will be interested now, I wonder? Oh, is it Formula One's lawyers, or is it the other lawyers that see that there's an opportunity for money? Oh, because lawyers aren't interested in the difference between right and wrong unless there's an opportunity in there for don't you worry, little heads. Anyway, 1.2.3. It will never be enforced so as to prevent or impede a competition. A competition. You'll never enforce any of these regulations because not only is it this is the FIA International Sporting Code, okay, and it will never be enforced so as to prevent or impede competition or the participation of a competitor, save for when the FIA concludes that it is necessary for safe, fair, or orderly conduct of motorsport. Okay, safety, right? Safety. So, that is the International Sporting Code. There's Article 48.8, which I used in the last video. Let's scroll to the top of these sporting regulations. Here they are. Formula One sporting regulations. Issue 13, issued the week before Abu Dhabi 2021. And we look down here. The FIA will organise the World Championship. These sporting regulations, there you go. Okay. All drivers, competitors, and officials participating in the championship undertake on behalf of themselves, their employees, agents and suppliers to observe all of the provisions as supplemented or amended of the International Sporting Code, the Formula One technical regulations, the Formula One financial regulations, and the present sporting regulations. This document. So all drivers, competitors, and officials. So the competitors are all of the teams. That would be you, Christian Horner. That would be you, Jonathan Wheatley. That would be you, Adrian Newey. Yeah. General undertaking of these regulations. All of you undertake on behalf of yourselves, all of your employees in your team, agents and suppliers that supply your team, to observe all of the provisions as supplemented or amended of the International Sporting Code. So you know that these regulations are not to be applied to in any way prevent or impede competition or the participation of a competitor. You know that. You signed up to that. These have been the regulations since the beginning of the 2012 season. This is the 199th Grand Prix where these regulations relating to the safety car procedure have been conducted. I've done videos about that, telling you just how many safety car deployments there have been, just how many times there have been lapped cars in situ where they've required to do this unlapping procedure, some of which Red Bull benefited from. You know what the procedure is, you know what it's for. And just as a recap for everybody, what it's for is that at this point now, having put the safety car out on track, having lapped behind that safety car, from being in a situation where all the cars are spread out around the track in various locations, you can't clear the incident up with all the cars like this because there's going to be a car driving by every few seconds. You've not got a window of opportunity where you've got a couple of minutes for guys and girls to be out there on the track sweeping away the debris in relative safety. Okay, Perez out here. There seems to be a bit of a gap out here, but generally that's the problem. This is why you don't use the virtual safety car in situations like this, because you still have cars circulating around that track at those intervals. And what you need to do, the whole purpose of the safety car, is to create this bunch of cars whereby once that bunch has passed the incident, you've then probably got a minute and a half to 2 minutes before it comes back round again. That 2 minute window for which you can be working in that location on the track. That's why they do it. Also to inject the drama, to excite the kiddies. That's another reason they do it. But from being in a position for Lando Norris where he was that far away from Pierre Gasly, just over 11 seconds, less distance behind Gasly than Max Verstappen was behind Hamilton. Because of Latifi crashing, because of the safety car deployment, relative to Gasly, now Norris is here, Gasly is here. When that field bunches slightly closer, just as Hamilton backs everybody up, ready to restart, and the field is closely bunched, well, Norris is now a lap behind Gasly. That's not just Norris that's impacted. You've got these 5 cars here that are impacted. You've got Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll there. You've got Mick Schumacher, the white dot. They're all eligible to be released to restore sporting fairness to all competitors. This procedure, what it does, it wipes out all of the previously built up advantages. So if they're going to be wiped out for one, they're wiped out for all. That's the way it goes. That's why it's a sport. This is sporting fairness to all competitors. The restart condition has to be met, and that is all the competitors in the correct race order, lined up one behind the other with all the previously built up advantages wiped out. That's why we have the regulation, and that's why it must achieve that. Nothing to do with, oh, it's optional, they can choose not to do it, but that's normally on a wet day where they don't. Will they release the lapped cars? They'll all get blue flags, you know. All absolute bollocks. Absolute lies. Norris is now left a lap behind Gasly. You can't restart like that. You can't allow a safety incident to impact one guy's race to such an extent where he can no longer challenge for the position ahead of him. What they did, they just selected 5 cars to give this one guy a chance. Because they didn't give third place a chance, they left 2 cars in between second and third, so third was blocked off. It was a complete muckery, shall we say. You know, mockery with an F. It was a complete mockery. Okay? Complete contrivance. They created a duel. They created a single lap shootout to decide a championship, knowing that they were breaking the rules, knowing full well that they were breaking the rules to set something up that was illegal, but knowing that in doing so, one guy was a huge favourite now because his grip levels were so much more in advance of the other guy, it would enable him to attack that lap far, far harder, giving him such a massive advantage. You don't go and try and set your qualifying lap on 44 lap old hard compound tyres, do you? No, you use fresh soft compound tyres, don't you? Yeah. Why is that? Oh, because you're going to be a couple of seconds a lap faster on those soft compound tyres, the fresh ones. Yeah, we kind of know that from watching Formula One and how it works. Oh, but now we know one car's on 44 lap old hard tyres, one's on fresh soft compound tyres. Let's break the rules and see who wins. That'll be exciting, won't it? That'll be exciting. That'll excite the kiddies. No, that's called race fixing. That's manipulating an outcome. That's breaking the rules to manipulate an ending, knowing full well the probability of what the ending of that is going to be. That's what you did, Formula One. But they like the balance of probability in Formula One. Not Formula One, in the judicial system. They're great at probability, these judges. Let's have a look at him. Paul Harris, there he is. Paul Harris. He'll know the on the balance of probability. The learned. They'll refer to Paul as the learned Paul Harris. That's what judges will refer to Paul as. Let's see how learned Paul is. Anyway, so let's just see how good Toto Wolff's lawyer actually is, and let's see how he fares. I mean, To take you through the procedure here, Mercedes, the impacted team here, that lost out. They should have won that race. Their driver, Lewis Hamilton, should have been declared an 8-time world champion. Had the rules and regulations played out, that is what should have happened. Oh, to just return to the other narratives that were given. Oh, they could have resumed racing like this with lapped cars in situ. No, they absolutely can't. Oh, they should have red flagged it. No, no, you see, when you're watching a Grand Prix race, every time there's an incident, do they throw the red flag? No, they don't, do they? And there's a reason for that. You only throw a red flag under certain circumstances. Those circumstances being if the track is blocked so that that safety car snake cannot pass that location, you have to red flag it. If the clear up operation is going to take a prolonged period, now the standard amount of laps lost in such circumstances is 5.5 laps, meaning with that being an average, sometimes the incident's cleared up in less time, sometimes more time. So if that clear up operation is going to take out more than, say, 6 or 7 laps of that race, then you might consider red flagging it so that you're not losing so many laps of the race. Okay, there are incidents where it's up to 7 laps, and that is deemed acceptable to still keep going behind the safety car and just utilise the safety car, not red flag the event. But if it's going to be a prolonged repair job to the barriers to make them fit for purpose again, then you would consider red flagging it. The other situation would be if you need to deploy the medical car and there'd be a medical emergency on track. You don't want a stream of Formula One cars passing that incident while somebody is receiving medical treatment. You don't want to be disturbed and have that impact in the potential treatment that is being administered to a human being. Human life is far more important than the spectacle of a Formula One race. So it's not a red flag situation. The only possible outcome from the moment in time Nicholas Latifi's brake caught fire and they deployed that fire extinguisher, prolonging the recovery of that, meaning that track, the marshals were only jumping over the barriers at turn 14 as that safety car snake was passing. So clearly the clerk of the course could not declare that track safe until that safety car snake had passed and he'd done his checks, made sure all the marshals were clear of the track. Only then could he radio race control and say, yes, you're now fine to conduct the regulation, the mandatory procedure for unlapping to restore sporting fairness to all competitors. Oh no, we're on lap 57 now, it's too late. Because even if we release the lapped cars on lap 57, the safety car returns to the pits at the end of the following lap, meaning that this is now a safety car finish. No other ending. That's all there is to it. You've been lied to. Every form of media is disorientated you, told you, oh, it could have been this, it could have been this. What do you think? Do you think they could have done that? Oh, well, I think this. It doesn't matter what you think. I've just told you what it is. And if you think otherwise, you're wrong. That's just all there is to it. Some things in this life are binary. They're either right or they're wrong. They either are or they're not. Your opinion is irrelevant. Your opinion is irrelevant. It is what it is. That's just what it is. So, Mercedes put in an appeal to the FIA, the governing body of the sport, the officials of the sport, who at races are represented by 4 stewards who have to make these decisions. Mercedes put in an appeal to the stewards to say that race has been conducted in breach of the regulations. What the race director has done there is in breach of the regulations. What he has constructed is not in accordance with the regulations. What he has done, he has applied the regulation wrongly by only releasing 5 of 8 lapped cars and also not affording that further lap of the safety car with which to enable those released cars, which is not enough of the released cars anyway, to try to catch the back of the pack to achieve the restart condition. He's failed to do that, hence that restart is invalid. That is the nature of the Mercedes appeal. So, when you appeal to the governing body, the stewards of the governing body, with that information, what happens? Well, the stewards simply have to assess what is the nature of the appeal, what are they stating to be the problem, what are the regulations, and what actually happened. Well, quite simply, the regulation is once it's safe to do so, and the clerk of the course has declared it safe, and the message is given to all the competitors to say we're now going to do this. They will need to be made aware so that the cars on the lead lap stop weaving around to keep temperature in their tyres, we're told, according to this tyre narrative. And the cars that are allowed to be released, they get informed that you are now going to be released. And the cars that are on the lead lap will stay on the racing line so you can go past them. So that information has to be given to them. They'll be released if they're eligible to be released. Okay, which means that they were lapped at the time of the incident or before the safety car crossed the safety car line for the second time. That makes you eligible to be released, to have sporting fairness restored to you. All 8 of them were eligible. So that didn't take place, and then the safety, once the last lapped car has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. That affords those released cars at least that lap plus the remainder of the lap that they were released on, with which to attempt to make it around the track and catch the back of that safety car snake, achieving a condition where you've got the line of cars lined up in the correct race order with all the previously built up advantages wiped out between all competitors. So you restart from that scratch position for everybody. Everybody can contest for those positions around them. You didn't do that. You blocked off third place from challenging for second place. You gave second place defenders behind him effectively. And even though they weren't necessarily defenders, it got a 2 to 3 second gap before third could even catch him. So he was safe. He had one thing to do and one thing only, attack. Didn't have to worry about any form of defence, did he? Lando Norris in 7th had no chance. He was left 2/3 of a lap behind 6th. The position of Daniel Ricciardo in 12th position, Daniel had pitted for some fresh soft compound tyres. 11th place Charles Leclerc hadn't, and 10th place Sebastian, no, it's the other way around, isn't it? 11th place Sebastian Vettel hadn't, and 10th place Charles Leclerc hadn't. So Daniel Ricciardo on those fresh soft compound tyres, you'd have thought would have had an advantage on the restart to maybe overtake those two cars. Oh no. When that race got going, the cars of Leclerc and Vettel, they were out at turn 5. He didn't have a chance, did he? McLaren didn't protest. Don't you worry your little heads about that. Toto supplies the engines there. Anyway, so Mercedes appealed to the steward saying you have not complied with the rules and regulations of the sport. What does the FIA do? Well, their job, the steward's job, is to go, okay, here are the rules. What took place? Well, the rules state that all 8 cars have got to be released because they're all eligible, and the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. Yep, that's the rules. What happened? Oh, only 5 cars were released. Well, that's a breach. And the safety car came straight in. Oh, that's a breach. Yes. By restarting, that was invalid. Your appeal is absolutely right, Mercedes. That last lap is invalid, and therefore we have to rewind and declare the race finish to be the running order at the end of the last valid lap. Now, on lap 57, those rules and regulations were broken. By race control only releasing 5 of 8 cars, that broke the regulations. So, the last valid lap was lap 56. So, the race order at the end of lap 56 has to be the declared result. That's what the FIA stewards should have simply done. And had you got a competent barrister, okay, had you got only the finest of the barristers, had you got the best barrister in the world, Paul Harris, had you got somebody that knew what they were doing, that's what it has just held them to. From the Mockton Chambers, 50 grand a day barrister, the legal expert, King's Counsel. Had you got somebody like that? Oh, you have. You got somebody like that. He didn't do that, did he? He didn't do that. What did happen? Well, what happened was Mercedes appealed to the FIA. The FIA responded by saying that we'll summon Red Bull here. What are you doing? Mercedes are appealing to the governing body saying, you, the governing body, your race control has broken the rules of the sport. Your job is to assess the rules of the sport relative to what took place and determine that, yes, he has not followed the rules of the sport and therefore this is the action that we must take. Instead of doing that, at 7:33 in the evening, 1933, Formula One stewards from the FIA summon the team manager from Red Bull at 1933. This is document 54. Document 55, produced 1 minute later, is them summoning the Mercedes team management. Oh, we're going to have a dance-off in the steward's appeal. What's going on here? What is going on here? Now, you'd think any professional lawyer, a King's Counsel lawyer, not just an average lawyer, okay, not just your conveyancing solicitor, yeah, nothing like that. This is somebody that's an expert of all legal matters, a sporting expert, into cartel shit. No, we read this about him, about not Al Capone's lawyer, Paul Harris of the King's Counsel there. The Chambers Review, it tells you there he's both abuse of dominance and cartel matters. He's concerned about that. So if you've got a guy with them credentials, you'd be saying, what's going on here? Why have the FIA stewards summoned the team manager of Red Bull Racing Honda in regard to this matter? That's not right. Why has he done that at 1933, the first thing that they do relative to this appeal? And at 1934, then summon Mercedes. That's not right, so the alarm bell should be ringing there. And it's the same for corrupt stewards. Gary Connolly, is he the guy that gets a lift on the Red Bull private jet in between Grand Prix? Is that the one that Toto was talking about? Derek Warwick, the one with the conflict of interest, owns a Honda dealership, so should not even be anywhere near Formula One. Have no say whatsoever in whether a Honda-powered car receives a penalty or not that could determine whether or not it wins a world championship, which would give kudos to the Honda brand, perhaps a great marketing tool and help you sell Honda vehicles, which he sells and therefore financially benefits from. Oh, that's called a conflict of interest. You would think, again, that a King's Counsel barrister, an expert of law, okay, knowing the law and knowing the notion of conflict of interest, that Paul Harris, King's Counsel, the man with the silk, got awarded his silk, earned his silk in 2011. Doesn't look so good without his wig on, does he? Doesn't look so convincing as a man of integrity without the costume on, does he? I don't know. Maybe I don't want to shatter the illusion of integrity. Everybody, please believe in the Emperor's new clothes, the facade. Anyway, let's have a look what Mercedes were appealing about, because having both teams been summoned in front of the four corrupt stewards of the FIA, and having, this is this is after it all played out. This was after 10 laps before the end. Christian had asked for his help from the racing gods, and cutting to Ted Kravitz in the pits, going, "Are we in for another tyre twist, Crofty?" When Lando Norris suffered that phantom slow puncture, and then Nicholas Latifi had to be this lap with his dirty tyres and dropping a gear and dumping the throttle round turn 14. Oh no! This prick's crashed. You couldn't make it up, could you? And there's bound to be a couple of racing laps. That's what the plan was, wasn't it, Martin? That's what the plan was. But then it caught fire. Oh, shit. We're going to have to think on our feet a little bit here. So, will they let the lap runners through? I'm not sure it's mandatory, but that's not. If only it was a wet day, maybe then brakes wouldn't have caught fire, Martin. But that's normally on a wet day. And if they do, how long will they wait? They don't. Will they let the lap runners through? It's not mandatory. They'll all get blue flags, but that'll leave Max with a lot of work to do. That's F1 TV. Typical decision. I'm not surprised. Poor Max, everybody. Always the victim. Israel Verstappen, always the victim. Never the aggressor. Oh, that's how they made you feel. That's how Formula One contrived it to make you feel. That's how they do it. Cut and paste. Show you the replay of the crash rather than the clear up operation so you can see for yourself just how long it's taken. Yeah, that's how they do it. That's how they manipulate you. That's how they dupe you. They don't show you what's really going on. They just construct a narrative to make you believe something to be the case when you've got these paid commentators lying to you about the situation, neglecting law. And lawyers aren't worried about the law. They're worried about arguing for money. Yeah, that's the way the law works. That's the way our corrupt legal system is contrived. It's an industry. Anyway, don't you worry your little heads about that. We're talking about the Steward's appeal. Document 58. Mercedes protest of Article 48.12. 4 corrupt stewards there. Felix Holter, he's corrupt. He's seen this process play out time and time again as well. So, the protest filed by Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team against the classification established at the end of the competition. The protest is dismissed. Let's see why they dismissed the valid protest. Because the protest was entirely valid. And we've got an expert of the law presenting that protest to a guy that's just a used car salesman acting as a judge. So how on earth can a used car salesman acting as a judge dismiss the protest of a legal expert, a King's Counsel legal expert? What's going on there, everybody? I mean, note that Toto Wolff's not interested in being there. You know, the most important protest that he'll ever have in his entire career. No, Toto's just employed his lawyer, hasn't he? So anyway, he'll trust his lawyer to do that. Toto is partying like it's 1999, crowd surfing. Anyway, so the parties were summoned. Documents 54 and 50. Why are you summoning parties? Because you don't need to summon parties. You just need to make a decision in accordance by comparing the rules and regulations with what took place and determine whether what took place was in accordance with those rules and regulations. You don't need to summon any parties. But this is all part of the facade that they duped everybody with. All part of the show. Because don't you worry your little heads. You won't understand it. We are now here with all of the experts and former world champions, Damon Hill and Nico Rosberg and Jenson Button, and we're getting everybody's opinion about what might be going on, and we've brought out the juggler, old Craig Slater, to tell you, well, what's going on in there is that the two teams are arguing it out, thrashing it out to see to see what they're going to do in this situation, because Mercedes are going to believe that that race should not have restarted like that. But what? Let me know what you think in the comments section. All the bullshit, all the presented show, all the facade, as the others are conjecturing. Oh well, yeah, it's going to be controversial. That is. Well, but Max absolutely deserved it. It's been a tremendous season. So exciting. Let's bring it back to lap 1. Should they have penalised Lewis there for cutting the corner on? Oh, shall we do that? Shall we divert your attention to something else that may have been contrived that they spoke about for about 8 laps? Who knows? Was it all? How much of that race was scripted to divert your attention? Speculation. Let's not worry about that. Overruled. Anyway, on behalf of Mercedes, Ron Meadows, Andrew Shovlin, and Paul Harris. Now, when you hear Ron Meadows speak, not very convincing. Neither Andrew Shovlin. Okay? Now, if you need a job doing, you send in competent people. And if you put your trust in the competence of legal counsel, legal experts, then this is sometimes what you get. This is what you get because they just comply with the system. They're quite happy to cut deals and really just uphold the illusion. Anyway, on behalf of Red Bull, Jonathan Wheatley, who's left the sinking ship. Now, this corrupt individual, corrupt criminal, a fraudster, is team principal of the Stake Kick Sauber team. Christian Horner just departed the Red Bull team. Adrian Newey departed the Red Bull sinking ship first. See how they're all like rats leaving a sinking ship, just like Formula 1. Jean Todt. He was head of the FIA at the time of Abu Dhabi. Oh, a week later he'd left. We've got now Mohammed Ben Sulayem. Didn't do anything about it to correct it, did he? So still complicit. But at the time, it was a different guy. Oh, not me, Gov. I'm not there anymore. That's how they get away with not being put in prison. Too many movements. It becomes a tangled web. Oh, who was there at that time? Whose fault was that? Oh, everybody shifted around now, so you can't pin anything on us. So Red Bull, as an interested party, were permitted to attend. See, that's a contradiction, isn't it? Okay? Protest dismissed. The parties were summoned. Okay? So if they're summoned and then documents demonstrate that they were summoned, here's the document. Okay? That a team representative is required to report to the stewards in relation to the incident below. So that's a requirement. And here, you're saying, in your report, Red Bull, as an interested party, was permitted to attend. So you're either summoned, okay, it's mandatory that you attend if you're summoned, or, oh, we'll let you because you're interested in this. There's a difference there, isn't there? There's a difference. This doesn't make sense. Let's see how many holes this has got. The hearing, but the legal expert Paul Harris wouldn't have identified that. Okay, the hearing adjourned at 2050 to allow Red Bull to consider its response in further detail and reconvene. Red Bull's response? Let's consider the matter being considered here. The matter being considered here is Mercedes have said to the governing body of the sport, the manner in which you have carried out these procedures, these mandatory procedures, are wrong, and therefore that restart was illegal. You cannot allow that to in any way stand, and therefore that race result has to be amended to the running order. So the race order at the end of lap 56. That's all it is. Nothing to do with Red Bull's opinion, or for Red Bull to consider its response. So we're adjourning something. If the meeting began at 8:15 in the evening and went on till 8:50 in the evening, It's gone on for 35 minutes, and then they've said, right, we're stopping this now. Red Bull, you go away for 40 minutes to consider your response, to put forward your argument here. What kind of shit show is this? What kind of a facade is this that they're trying to show the world? That's not procedure, is it? That's not procedure. You would think that a King's Counsel barrister would know that that's the case. This isn't a situation where you get a third party to present its case. This is a simple case of, these are the rules of the sport, this is what you did, that is wrong, change it. That is all this appeal is. It's nothing to do with a third party coming in and being afforded the opportunity to go away for 40 minutes to come up with its interpretation of what it believes those rules could mean. That's nothing to do with it. Just like you could attend a public hearing. You could go and sit in a court of law to just observe what is going on as an interested party. What the judge will not do is adjourn those proceedings to afford you the time to go away and construct an argument on behalf of a defendant. No, you're just an interested party observing. You don't get to say anything. That's the way the law works. You would think that the King's Counsel, Paul Harris, would know that. You would think that ahead of this, well, we'll come to it now. The race director was present for the reconvened hearing. No, the race director being there, well, he's the guy that made the decision. He might try to give some justification. He might excuse it. He might try and say, well, I had a gun to my head. I was being forced to do this under duress. Still not mitigating circumstances. It might be to save his own life. It could be that. But it still doesn't excuse it. Still doesn't mean you don't change it. Unless somebody, as an interested party, has got a gun to the head of the stewards as well. Who knows? Let me know what you think in the comment section. At the hearing, there were no objections against the composition of the stewards panel. Now, again, as a legal expert, Paul Harris, you would expect legal expert Paul Harris to be able to identify a conflict of interest within those stewards, wouldn't you? You would expect that Paul Harris, King's Counsel, would be able to identify that Derek Warwick here, a steward who declared Max Verstappen his favourite to be the great white hope, that the guy that he hoped would usurp Lewis Hamilton. There seems to be maybe some judicial bias going on here, doesn't there? He's got a conflict of interest and he's declared his lust for Max Verstappen in the past. Maybe he's racist as well by declaring him the great white hope. You would think that a legal counsel could object to the composition of that stewards panel, couldn't you? But he didn't, because there were no objections by the King's Counsel, Paul Harris. The parties set out oral arguments and addressed the questions asked by the stewards. Oh, this all sounds official, doesn't it? That's what it's intended. It's intended to make you think that. It's intended to make you believe that this is an official process that's going on. A back and forth, constructed game of whiff-waff. Just like the judges direct you to conduct your affairs when you go to the courts of law with a problem that can easily be resolved, okay, through the application of law. But no, the judges, what they do is they direct a game of whiff-waff and make that last 3 years. Each step of the way conducting you to do something else that you must pay your advocate for, somebody that speaks on your behalf that you have to pay money for. Each time the judge directs the proceedings to do something else. And then after 3 years of the rape, they then decide how they're going to contrive the ending. That's the way the law works. Okay, but don't you worry, little heads, about that. Paul Harris here. Paul Harris will be the expert of that. Anyway, because he's a King's Counsel barrister, an expert of the law. So, no objections to having corrupt people being there as stewards with conflicts of interest. At the hearings, the parties referred to the documents submitted. What documents were submitted? What documents were submitted? Quite simply, all we need to do is refer to the International Sporting Code, which underpins the regulations. And the fact is, all drivers, competitors and officials participating in the championship undertake on behalf of themselves, their employees, agents and suppliers to observe all of the provisions as supplemented or amended of the International Sporting Code and all the regulations. Okay? Them being that these regulations will never be enforced to us to prevent or impede competition or the participation of a competitor. And yet Red Bull have been given 40 minutes to go away and justify those regulations being applied that impeded competitors, impeded Carlos Sainz from challenging for third place, impeded Lando Norris from challenging for sixth place of Pierre Gasly. Those stewards allowed Red Bull to disappear for 40 minutes to contrive that argument that they then put forward in breach of the FIA International Sporting Code, in breach of these regulations, which we'll scroll down now to Article 48 when I grab hold of that, and we'll go down here to some wherever this is. 50, too far. 50, 49, 48. And it's 48.12. Now, before we look at 48.12, just for context, we'll look at 48.10, which is, except under 48.12, which is where you've got lapped cars in that running order, the safety car shall be used at least until the leader is behind it and all remaining cars are lined up behind him. What is that then? The leader behind the safety car and all the other cars lined up behind the leader. This is where cars haven't been like. What have you got? Well, you've got a line of cars. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. That's what you've got. All in the correct race order, with all of the previously built up advantages wiped out because they've all bunched up. The deployment of that safety car has had a uniform effect on all competitors. Obviously, the leader has had his advantage over second place wiped out. That's just the way it is for the leader. But everybody else, they've been allowed to catch the bloke in front, but the guy behind them has also caught them. So on the restart, yes, they can attack the car in front, but also they are susceptible to being attacked from the car behind. That is how the regulation works. That's a fairness to everybody because everybody's aware that that is what happens. Those are the conditions that were met for resuming the contest. It applies to you all. That's what it is. Okay, you'll gain on the guy that you're trying to follow, but the guy that's trying to pass you, he'll gain on you. It applies to everybody in that manner. So 48.12 is just to achieve that when cars have been lapped. And quite simply, if the clerk of the course considers it safe to do so, it's all about safety. You can only go racing again once things are safe, because the reason you've deployed the safety car in the first instance is because it's unsafe. So you can't just go, oh, we've been doing this for a long period of time now, let's just race again. No. You've deployed it to deal with a safety incident. You've got to make sure that safety incident is dealt with. So firstly, you deal with things and make sure everything is safe. That is making sure there is no obstacles on the track, such as crashed cars. There's no debris on the track. The barriers have been checked to make sure they're still capable of performing their function, and there are no marshals on the track. That is what needs to be carried out. Once the clerk of the course, who oversees that clear-up operation and is responsible for the safety of that track, has declared things to be safe, Then he hands back to race control and carries out this procedure. But firstly, it has to be safe. That's why you deployed the safety car in the first instance. You then send the message to all those competitors that lapped cars may now overtake. After race control has received information, okay, track is safe, we're good to now carry out this procedure. So now we've got to send the message out. Cars on the lead lap need to know we're going to be carrying out this procedure, so stop weaving. Cars that are going to be released, you need to be told now you're going to be released, so begin unlapping. So the message is lap cars may now overtake has been sent to all competitors via the official messaging system. Any cars, no, it doesn't say all, okay, doesn't say all. Any cars that have been lapped by the leader will be required to pass the cars on the lead lap and the safety car. See, it says required. Doesn't say optional. Doesn't say mandatory, because it doesn't need to. Okay, it just says once it's safe, you give this message out, and any cars that have been lapped are required to pass. It's a requirement this is carried out. Now, the reason it says any is because there is a qualifying criteria, and we'll come to that. It states it further down here. If they used the word all there, which again was another thing that they threw out there, oh, any doesn't mean all. Argue about that in the comments section. Those of you who think you're legal experts and think that legally you can argue over the meaning of a word and that legally that changes everything. Yes, the smooth brains think themselves knowledgeable, don't they? No, the reason it doesn't say all, because it might not be all. Okay, it's only the cars that meet the qualifying criteria. So if you utilize the word all and some don't meet the qualifying criteria, okay, then it's not all then, is it? You'd have to actually word it all that meet the qualifying criteria. But instead, they just utilized the term any, because they didn't expect people to be corrupt. When Charlie Whiting wrote these rules, he didn't expect corrupt criminals like Horner, Wheatley and Newey to be afforded the opportunity by the corrupt FIA, by the corrupt Formula One as an entity, to be able to present otherwise. But now that Charlie's out of the way, anything goes. Anything goes. What? No, I'm not going to go there. Anyway. So this is a qualifying criteria. This is why they didn't use the word all, where it's got any here. This will only apply to cars that were lapped at the time they crossed the line at the end of the lap during which they crossed the first safety car line for the second time after the safety car was deployed. Which means at the point of the incident and within the first lap of that safety car being deployed, if you are lapped within that period, either were lapped or became lapped within that period, you are eligible for this unlapping procedure. If you get yourself lapped after that point in time, you are not eligible. They will deem you to have pitted at a point in time where you went into the pits, and then whilst you were in the pits, that safety car snaked past you, making you then lapped when you shouldn't have done that. And as we saw in Abu Dhabi 2021, Pierre Gasly waited quite some time, a couple of laps before he pitted for fresh tyres, making sure he wasn't lapped. So that's the way the teams do their strategies. It can be unfortunate, for example, if you suffer a puncture late in a safety car period and you need to go and pit and get lapped in that way, then it's unfortunate. But it's to deter teams from prolonging this period and effectively taking the piss, all right, causing the safety car to prolong because they've pitted so late in that safety car window. Okay, so having overtaken the cars on the lead lap, so these are the message has been sent to these lapped cars that are to be released. All 8 of them qualified to be released, so all 8 of them should have been released. They only released 5. But having overtaken the cars on the lead lap and the safety car, These cars should then proceed around the track at an appropriate speed, so we're not racing here, which they did. Okay, those five cars that were released began racing the moment they crossed that start-finish line for the first time after they'd been released. That is illegal. Okay, again, Paul Harris, our King's Counsel, you'd have thought he'd have been able to identify that, but doesn't appear to have said a word. I mean, we don't know what he said, okay, but all we know is he lost. So whatever he did say wasn't good enough, and he wasn't willing to come away from them proceedings and identify to the world just how corrupt it was. Stayed quiet, didn't he? Stay quiet. Oh, is that client confidentiality? Only acting on the wishes of your client, your mafia boss Toto told you no, we're not gonna appeal that. Who's pulling whose strings? Anyway, don't you worry your little head about that. So, having overtaken the cars on the lead lap and the safety car, these cars should then proceed around the track at an appropriate speed, which is not racing each other, without overtaking. And if you're racing, gives you the chance of overtaking, which is what those five cars were attempting to do. They couldn't, and the reason they couldn't is by the time they got to that start-finish line, for what should have been the unlapping lap where they shouldn't have been racing, but they were allowed to race, the gap between each of the competitors were over a second, or about a second. It wasn't a case of them being bunched up right on each other's tail, ready for the restart, and when Lando started gunning it, all the four cars behind him but all went for it at the same time and looking for them overtakes on that initial lap. No, that didn't happen for them cars. Completely skewed outcome for each of them five cars because the restart of that was just wrong. Just wrong. Shouldn't have happened. Anyway, well, no restart for anybody. Without overtaking, and make every effort to take up position at the back of the line of cars behind the safety car. Whilst they are overtaking, this is the cars on the lead lap, this is. And in order to ensure this may be carried out safely, the cars on the lead lap must always stay on the racing line unless deviating from it is unavoidable. Unless the clerk of the course considers the presence of the safety car is still necessary, once the last lapped car has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. Now, it states the purpose here. Make every effort to take up position at the back of the line of cars behind the safety car, creating this snake of cars in the correct race order with all of the previously built up advantages wiped out. That is the intention. That is the purpose. If that isn't achieved within that one lap of that safety car that it is afforded, the race director can choose to keep that safety car on track, utilising his overriding authority over the use of that safety car. He has the overriding authority to deploy it in the first instance as his choice to deal with a safety incident, because he's got various measures at his disposal, such as yellow flags, virtual safety car, or potentially red flag in the event. Once he's chosen to use the safety car, Article 48 kicks in and he has to follow this set of regulations. He can override not override. Once he's carried out this regulation, which he must do, what he can do is he can prolong the use of the safety car to restore sporting fairness. That is his overriding discretion. He doesn't have the discretion to ignore this regulation. He has to carry that out, but what he can do is actually keep the safety car on track for a further lap to afford those released cars the chance of fully catching the back of the pack. That bit is discretional. That's his overriding authority. And so here we go. Once the last lapped car has passed the leader, that didn't happen. Did King's Counsel barrister, did he identify that? We'll never know. The safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap, while the safety car returned to the pits immediately. If the clerk of the course considers track conditions are unsuitable for overtaking, the message "overtaking will not be permitted" will be sent to all competitors via the official messaging system. No, we didn't get that message. We got the message "lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake" is the message that the world was shown by F1 TV and the FIA. That's the message they broadcast to us, which is not even in the regulations, is it? See, overtaking will not be permitted. It's easy to understand. Everybody understands overtaking will not be permitted. Everybody's like, oh, we're not allowed to overtake. Lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake. What does that mean? If I'm not lapped, am I allowed to overtake? Lapped cars, does that mean we're not allowed to overtake each other? So Lando Norris, and behind Lando Norris you've got Alonso, and you've got Ocon, and behind Ocon you've got Leclerc, and you've got Sebastian Vettel. We're all lapped cars. We're not allowed to overtake. What, so our positions are now fixed between now and the end of the race? Because race control said we're not allowed to overtake. But who is anybody else allowed to overtake? Are we going to get blue flags and Max is allowed to pass us? Once he passes, is Max allowed to overtake? Oh, nobody knows. Too many questions to be asked during a Formula One Grand Prix where it's a highly complex technical sport where they're trying to travel around at 200 miles an hour and ask all them questions. Oh, it's because it's not a regulation. That's all part of the facade. But we've got 48.13. Now, does it say that any of these regulations override another regulation, or are they just sequential? No, they're just sequential, aren't they? Apart from when it says in 48.10, apart from 48.12, because this is the regulation that applies when there's lapped cars in situ. 48.13 says this. When the clerk of the course decides it's safe to call in the safety car, the message "safety car in this lap" will be sent to all competitors via the official messaging system, and the car's orange lights will be extinguished. This will be the signal to competitors and drivers that it will be entering the pit lane at the end of that lap. At this point, the first car in line behind the safety car may dictate the pace and, if necessary, fall more than 10 car lengths behind it. In order to avoid the likelihood of accidents before the safety car returns to the pits, from the point at which the lights on the car are turned out, drivers must proceed at a pace which involves no erratic acceleration or braking, nor any other manoeuvre which is likely to endanger other drivers or impede the restart. As the safety car is approaching the pit entry, the safety car boards will be withdrawn, and other than on the last lap of the sprint qualifying session or the race, as the leader approaches the line, the yellow flags will be withdrawn and the green flag and or green light panel will be displayed at the line. So that last little caveat is in the event of a safety car finish, where the safety car will return to the pits, peel off before they cross that start finish line, because they don't want the spectacle being harmed by the presence of a safety car. So they'll still see the spectacle of a car taking the checkered flag even though they couldn't have overtaken. That's what that bit's there for. Do you read any part there saying this article overrides 48.12? Does it say that? No. Does it say this one, okay, is mandatory, okay, but 48.12 isn't? Does it say that? No. Let's go back to what Red Bull's arguments are, that they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't have been given. They shouldn't be there. The stewards are corrupt. They've got a conflict of interest. They're not just there as an interested party. They were summoned there. They've been afforded the time to go away to construct an argument to try to defend the actions of the FIA race director. It's not their job to defend the actions of the race director. It's all wrong. Okay. They've referred to the documents submitted. Which documents are these? This is the 2021 Concord Agreement, signed by all the teams, but it's a secret for everybody else. Oh, that's the one whereby the teams get a proportion in prize money of the proceeds of the show. So the more money the show makes, the more prize money available to the teams. So if we can create a bigger spectacle and attract more kiddies to watch the sport, more eyes on the prize means we can sell the marketing space for this sport for more money. Oh, more money for everybody involved. Cha-ching. Is this the document submitted by Red Bull, or is it some other little deal that you've got going on between Toto and Red Bull as the interested party? Who knows what deals get made amongst thieves? Anyway, the claims of Mercedes. Mercedes made a claim, or did Mercedes factually identify that the rules and regulations of the sport had been breached by the race director when he applied them wrongly? It's not a claim, is it? It's a factual statement. So, Mercedes claimed that there were two breaches of sporting regulations, Article 48.12, namely which states that any cars that have been lapped by the leader will be required to pass the cars on the lead lap and the safety car. Okay, only 5 were. Okay, not all 8. So that is a breach. And once the last lap car has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. Yes, that was breached as well. What are the consequences of that breach? Oh, well, third place is blocked off from challenging for second place because 2 of those 3 lapped cars that weren't released, well, they're still in the way of third, challenging for second. Those 5 that were released, the first of them, 7th place Lando Norris, he can't challenge 6th place Pierre Gasly on any kind of restart. Oh, those 5 cars that are released, they're now illegally racing around that lap that they should be unlapping on. This is a mockery. This is an entire mockery. Mercedes argued that had this been complied with, car 44 would have won the race. Now, we could easily make this even clearer. The fact of the matter is, the the marshals were departing the track at turn 14 as that safety car snake was passing that scene on lap 56. The very earliest that this could have been carried out was on lap 57, with that unlapping procedure beginning on lap 57 and the necessity for the safety car to then return to the pits at the end of the following lap. This race categorically had to be a safety car finish, and therefore there is no other outcome than Lewis Hamilton winning that race, providing he kept that car on track, didn't spin it like Max Verstappen did at Silverstone 2025. Okay, didn't spin it, didn't suffer a puncture, didn't suffer a mechanical failure, and none of them things happened because Hamilton did make it to the end of that race. But we don't even need to speculate because we saw what happened. That race categorically had to be a safety car finish. What they did something that was in breach of that. So you rewind to where the rules were not broken, the last valid lap, which concluded at the end of lap 56. It's as simple as that. They therefore requested that the stewards to amend the classification under Article 11.9.3H of the FIA International Sporting Code. Red Bull's arguments in defence. Now, who are Red Bull defending? Are Red Bull defending themselves? Well, Red Bull weren't breaching, so they don't need to defend themselves, do they? But the FIA stewards are presenting that Red Bull are defending. Who are they defending? So Red Bull are defending the FIA for the FIA breaching their own rules. Who's explained that to you? That would seem highly inappropriate. Do you think Paul Harris, our esteemed legal expert, King's Counsel, do you think he would have identified this isn't right? What's Red Bull being allowed to do here? What's Red Bull being allowed to be the advocates, vocate on behalf of the FIA, because the FIA can't speak for themselves. They need somebody that understands the law to be able to speak for them. Because the FIA, the rule makers, the lawmakers, they don't understand the law. This is the legal game where those who make the rules, those who enforce the rules, those who make the laws, such as this, the regulations, this, the sporting code, the FIA, the race director, the guy carrying out these, they can't speak for themselves. They need an expert to speak for them, don't they? That's where we get the lawyers. Now, we don't get the lawyers, we got Red Bull. We just got an interested party that had been summoned there to argue for them in defence. Surely Surely, Paul Harris, you'd say, things that make you go, that shit just ain't right. Were you wearing your wig and your cape when you were in there, Paul? I'm interested. I'd love to have seen you. I'd love to have seen you. Whether maybe they didn't understand the gravity of your abilities and your integrity and the fact you were a real King's Counsel expert lawyer because you weren't wearing your costume. I don't know. I wasn't there. Can't tell. Red Bull argued that that's trumped Paul Harris there. Ooh, that's a 3-year debate, isn't it? A legal argument. Any does not mean all. Absolutely, Red Bull. Absolutely right, Red Bull. Any does not mean all. Okay, but we're talking about the context. The context, because law doesn't exist in a vacuum. Okay, it needs to be applied to a specific set of circumstances. Again, you'd have thought the legal expert Paul Harris would be able to identify that, wouldn't you? You would think, wouldn't you? But any doesn't mean all. Absolutely right. Any doesn't mean all. But in this particular situation, where we're not denying any competitor, any participation of a competitor here, if you fail to carry out this regulation properly, as we saw, what you end up with is a mockery of third place being blocked off from competing with second place, of seventh place being left 2/3 of a lap behind sixth place. Okay, it produces skewed outcomes, so that interpretation, by trying to present that, is invalid. Okay, so trying to present that as a legal argument is invalid. And like I stated here, the reason why the use of the word any exists is because all is inappropriate. If you utilize the word all, you'd have to caveat it with the statement all who meet the eligibility criteria. And Charlie Whiting didn't feel the need to that. He used the word any, which would be in assumed parenthesis that meet the criteria, with that criteria here being displayed here. This will only apply to cars that were lapped at the time they crossed the line, at the end of the lap during which they crossed the safety car line for the second time after the safety car was deployed. But again, any doesn't mean all. Derek Warwick, the car salesman, is considering this. The judge, because he's passed his judge exam. He's been to university. He's got his judge degree, and now he's a fully qualified judge. Or has he just played the legal game of whiff-waff for 5 years, and now can conduct the game of whiff-waff? He's observed it enough. He's good enough to be a conductor now. Oh, neither of them. We need to get a fully qualified judge who's been to judge school and got a master's degree, got a doctorate in judgery. Yeah, who's got one of them? Who's got? Has anybody? Sorry, I've got this wrong. I've messed up. I've messed up there. I really don't know the qualifications that these judges must go and have to get. But it doesn't matter anyway, because Derek Warwick hasn't got any judge qualifications. He's just a used car salesman out in Jersey there. But he's considering the notion of any does not mean all. He's scratching his chin there, his chinny chin chin, and considering that notion. Article 48.13 of the sporting regulations states that the message safety car in this lap is a signal that it'll enter the pit lane at the end of that lap. Okay. That's a lovely sentence there. Well done, Red Bull. All you've done is you've said there's a sentence in Article 48.13. When the clerk of the course decides it's safe to call the safety car, the message safety car in this lap will be sent to all competitors via the official message. The car's orange lights will be extinguished, and this will signal to the competitors and drivers that it will be entering the pit lane at the end of that lap. And Red Bull have said, yes, 48.13 of the sporting regulation states that the message safety car in this lap is a signal to enter pits at the end of that lap. Okay. And your point is? I'm still waiting for your point, Red Bull. Okay. Oh, your point's number 3. This is a point, a different point, number 3, and therefore Article 48.13 overrides 48.12. No, that's not how it works, Red Bull. Let me explain this to you legally. I mean, you'd have thought that Paul Harris could have been able to legally explain this to you. The procedure 48.12 is a mandatory procedure because what it does, it restores the reset mandatory restart condition. So when you start a Grand Prix, the start condition is either the standing grid start, where all the cars are in the correct race order, first down to last, with all the gaps between them competitors being the same, the grid, yeah? So that's how you start a race. If you've got a rolling start, what you have is the snake of cars in the correct race order with similar distances and times gaps between each cars. Yeah, that's the start condition. So when you intervene in a race, eventually stopping competition, stopping racing, in order to start it again, you've got to meet that start condition where all of the gaps between all the competitors are wiped out. Yeah, and that's all of them are afforded the chance of sporting fairness being restored to everybody. You know, you do know this, Red Bull. You've all read the International Sporting Code. You've all read the regulations. You as team principal, you as team director, Nui and Wheatley signed up to this. You're representing your team and your employees to be compliant with those mandatory regulations. But now you're presenting something that's skewed from that. Oh, that's a breach. That's a ban from the sport, isn't it? Oh, we can't. Let's not worry our little heads about that. And that therefore, Article 48.13 overrides. No, firstly, nothing overrides 48.12. The only thing that overrides it is safety, because if it's not safe to do it, all that you do is continue lapping behind the safety car. When things are safe, you must carry that out. If there's not time to carry it out, it's a safety car finish. That's all there is to it. By saying that 48.13 overrides, that is an utter fallacy. It's not a one regulation overrides another. The only overriding is 48.12 overriding 48.10 in instances where there are lapped cars. That's the only alternative procedure. That's the only one because of that situation. Context. Law doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's all about the context of the situation. Your proposal, what is the context of your proposal? Well, you cannot leave a situation where you're withdrawing the safety car and leaving out there a situation that is unfair. So effectively resuming racing with lapped cars in situ, blocking off third place from challenging second. That is illegal relative to this sport. So it's unfair. What's also bullshit about the notion of it being, well, this relates to point 2 that they made. The sporting regulations state that the message safety car in this lap is the signal it'll enter the pits at the end of that lap. Now consider this. Safety car incident. The incident gets dealt with. The clerk of the course declares the track safe. Race control say, okay, we'll end the safety car period. We'll start racing at the end of this lap. So they give the message, safety car in this lap. Okay, so what does that mean? Safety car in this lap. But now something else happens. One of those competitors skids off, goes into a gravel trap. One of those competitors hits the barrier. Accident, debris on track, stricken car on track. Oh no! Oh no! There's another incident, but we've called in the safety car. We've thrown Article 48.13. We've stated that the safety car's coming in. So it's got to come in now. We've got to go No. You see, what you do is you react to it based on context. So it's not mandatory, is it? It's not mandatory. What it is, this is a regulation that you apply in a certain set of circumstances. And it doesn't mean that it's then, once you've said that, it's mandatory that it's got to come in. Because no, there still might be the need to reverse that and say, actually, there's now another incident and we need to keep that safety car out on track. So let's see what... well, the notion that it's mandatory is utter rubbish. You'd have thought a King's Counsel barrister would have been able to identify that. Point 4. Article 15.3 gives the race director overriding authority over the use of the safety car. Yes, it does. It gives the race director the discretionary use of it, meaning that when there is an incident, which is a safety concern, the race director has the choice of what he uses to deal with that incident. One of those choices at his disposal is the safety car. So he can choose when to use that safety car. He can choose to use it to deal with an incident on the track, such as a crash car in the event of Nicholas Latifi. He can use it if there is an incident off the track, such as a car in a gravel track, or a recovery vehicle still there, that he doesn't want these Formula 1 cars going off the track to run into one of those vehicles. He can use it when a pedestrian, a spectator, jumps onto the track, such as Singapore in one of those historic Grand Prix. Oh, that's in another video. Formula 1 will want to block that one. But yes, the race director can bring out the safety car if he determines that there's a safety incident that he needs to deal with, such as a spectator making it onto the track, like they did at Silverstone. Was it Silverstone 2022? Oh, they didn't show us that when there were protesters on the track. After that incident, where was it Zhou's car that ended up in the tyre barriers? And George Russell, the prancing pony, hopped along there, pranced along, jumped up on the tyre wall and pretended to be conducting the operation to get the guy out of his car. Remember that one? So, yeah, the race director can choose to deploy the safety car, such as on a wet day in Belgium, where it's a bit wet, we can't see anything, so I'll send the safety car out there to make things safe. And this is before the race starts, because obviously the race, according to those regulations, will be deemed to have started when the leader crosses the start-finish line for the first time after the safety car has returned to the pits. Because the safety car comes in when things are safe, and the race begins when things are then deemed safe. Oh, that never happened at the Belgian parade of 2021, but don't you worry your little heads about that. Max won the Belgian parade and got 12.5 points, and Lewis Hamilton only came third in the Belgian parade and got 7.5 points, a difference of 5. But don't you worry your little heads, we're not refunding those silly twats that came out and watched this in the rain. Yes, we've got to pretend to the global audience that you saw some sport today. But don't you worry your little heads about that one either, Formula 1. So, race director's overriding authority, 15.3, gives the race director overriding authority over the use of the safety car. So yes, he has the option of deploying it when he feels that the situation is unsafe. So he's got that authority. Once he's deployed it, then what he's got to do is carry out all of these articles in Article 48. Safety car. Once you've deployed the safety car, this is what applies to the safety car. And it tells you the regulations that apply to that safety car, who it's to be driven by, how it enters the track, when it can be brought into operation to neutralise racing, how it joins the track there, what the cars must do if the safety car is deployed, the fact that cars can't overtake under a safety car, which is in part 1 there, what the orders about when the safety car displays the green light to wave cars past it, how long it must stay out on the track until the cars are all bunched up behind it if cars haven't been lapped, and if cars have been lapped, this is what you do. 48.12, the fact that you can drive that safety car through the pit lane if the incident being cleared up is adjacent to that pit lane out on track, that's there written in these safety car regulations. The race control is not overriding this. He's got the discretion if he wants to bring it through the pit. So it's not overriding it. It's written in there. This is what you carry out if there's lapped cars in situ, and this is how you then bring it in. They're the regulations that Red Bull, as the interesting party who'd been summoned there, who are now advocating on behalf of the FIA, the rule makers, who can't speak for themselves. Instead, Red Bull are presenting their legal argument for them that the race director has got overriding authority. Yeah, and his overriding authority extends to ensuring that these regulations are enforced and making sure that they're enforced so that they'll never be enforced to prevent or impede competition or participation of a competitor, save where the FIA concludes that it is necessary for the safe, fair, or orderly conduct of motorsport. So there you go. There you go. You don't have the discretion to impede competition or the participation of a competitor. The race director does not have the overriding discretion to ignore 48.12 because by ignoring 48.12 it impeded Carlos Sainz from participating in challenging for second place in that race, from challenging Max Verstappen. It impeded Lando Norris from being able to challenge Pierre Gasly. So he'll never enforce regulations in a manner that does that. His overriding authority relates to this notion of if Lando Norris and the other 7 cars that should have been released didn't fully catch the back of the pack, he has at his discretion the overriding authority to keep that safety car out on track for a further lap to enable those released cars to fully catch the back of the pack, as he's demonstrated he's done on 4 previous occasions during his time as race director. That's all that is. And that even if all cars had been lapped, 8 in total, of which 5 were allowed to overtake the safety car, it would not have changed the outcome of the race. This is what Red Bull say in the comments section. Even if all underlined cars had been lapped, because any doesn't mean all, but even if all had, then it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the race. Well, the regulation is once the last lapped car, which is all of those 8, the last one of those 8, passes the safety car, that passes the leader, is released, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. So this is, we'll again get to here. Where are we? Here it is. Once the last lapped car has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. And yet Red Bull present, even if all 8 had been allowed past, it would not have changed the outcome. Oh, so you're saying, Red Bull, that, you let 5 go and then brought the safety car straight in. If they'd have let all go and brought the safety car straight in, it would have still been the same. No, you're still missing the bit that bringing the safety car straight in is wrong. That bit's the breach of a regulation. That's the crux of the matter as well, isn't it? Number 1, you have to release all because you can't just leave 3 there, blocking off 3rd place from challenging 2nd. But number 2, you brought the safety car in a lap early. That's a safety car finish. Red Bull are saying it wouldn't have changed the outcome. So a safety car finish wouldn't have changed the outcome, Red Bull. Safety car finish means that there's no overtaking. Safety car finish means that Max Verstappen can't challenge Lewis Hamilton for position. Safety car finish means that Max Verstappen finishes 2nd. Red Bull are presenting the argument here in defence of the FIA that it wouldn't have changed the outcome. Well, that's a lie that you'd have thought a legal expert could have just laughed at them and pulled that apart as well. We haven't heard anything from Paul Harris ever since, have we? no, no. But we've heard other people's testimonies. The Rodri of the Manchester City is Paul Harris. Anyway, the race director's evidence. The race director stated that the purpose of Article 48 was to remove those lapped cars that would interfere in the racing between the leaders. The narrative. Interference of the race between the leaders, which is why not only did he carry out the regulation correctly at Brazil 2019, at Spain 2019, Sakir 2020, Eiffel 2020, not only did he do it right at those 4 events, he used his 15.3, his overriding authority, to keep that safety car out on track for a further lap to make sure those release cars fully caught the back of the pack. Was that to make sure they fully got out of the way, they weren't an interference, Michael? Or was that because you were affording them the chance to restore sporting fairness to them and achieve the restart condition? We know what the answer is, Michael, but puppet there, Sooty, the silent puppet that now has signed a legal agreement, a non-disclosure order where he's been paid a sum of money to stay quiet, okay? And if he says anything, those people that paid him that sum of money will legally demand that he pays it back, probably with some penalty for opening his mouth and spilling the beans. That's the way the law works. That's a legal device, because you know the law is there for justice, not to come up with things um, to defraud people, to protect criminals. So you'd think. So you'd think. I mean, you'd think the notion of law was there for the notion of justice, rather than just have devices that get used to defraud people and basically hide information, deprive people of being information. Oh, the legal system is transparent because we need to make sure that the public, the people, believe in the legal system. So we need to ensure it's a basic human right that everybody is entitled to a transparent legal system, not one where things are hidden, not one where things are contrived and hidden. Strange that, isn't it? Don't you worry, little heads. The race director also stated that it had long been agreed by all teams that where possible it was highly desirable for the race to end in a green condition, i.e. not under safety car. That's a nice little statement, Michael. Absolutely irrelevant. But the strap-on fanboy will jump in the comments section, in that comments section warfare. You know, that online social media traffic that creates clicks and online interaction. The sport of Formula One is trending, hence the advertising space for Formula One is worth more money. Let's incite the conflict in Formula One. Yeah, let's do that. Let's tell everybody that any doesn't mean all, and the smooth brains can argue for that for the next 6 months. Let's tell the smooth brains that we'd all said it was highly desirable and agreed to a green finish. Yes, all the teams agreed to a racing. No, you can't have such an agreement. You compete and you contest these events in accordance with the rules and the regulations. You don't agree to a contrived ending. If the situation, the context, the circumstance dictate that is when you apply the correct rules and regulations to the circumstance, that's how the race must finish. That's how the race must finish. You can't agree, well, we've agreed to make sure it finishes like this. That's called manipulation. That's called contrivance. That's not allowed. You would think, oh, maybe Michael needed somebody to advocate for him because he wasn't capable of understanding the law and being able to articulate himself in a lawful manner. Maybe he needed Red Bull to create him a defence. Who knows? Who knows? But you'd have thought that our legal expert could have identified, Paul Harris, you'd have thought would have been able to identify the notion of a green finish being utter bollocks. Okay, You can't control. You can't agree. You have a whether there's a desire for it or not. Oh, it looks better. It's more exciting for the fans if it's a racing finish. You know, a racing finish would have been if Nicholas Latifi hadn't have crashed, right? And the race would have just carried on as normal for 5 and a bit laps, and Lewis Hamilton would have won by 12 seconds. That would have been a racing finish, wouldn't it? Yeah, teams agreed for a green finish. That's a racing finish. No, we had to excite everybody with a last lap shootout of two cars, first and second being really close together. One on brand new fresh soft compound tyres, which are much faster than the other one. We had to make that happen because that was what the teams agreed to. That's the green exciting finish because that's highly desirable. That makes more money, doesn't it? That we share out between the teams. The conclusion of the stewards, the conclusion of Derek Warwick, the great white hope, Honda car salesman, Felix Holter, corrupt steward, and Gary Connolly, Aussie. He's a guy that gets the lift in the private jet, is he not? Let me know what you think in the comment section, Toto. Conclusion of the stewards. The stewards consider that the protest is admissible. Mercedes have paid $5,000 or €5,000 or £5,000 for this protest. Yes, we believe that's a protest. As we'll take the money. Having considered the various statements made by the parties, the stewards determined the following. The learned stewards refer to one another as being learned, and they've received the testimony of the learned Red Bull affiliates and advocates who are vocating for themselves. So they're not advocating. They're speaking. No, they're advocating for the FIA. The Article 15.3 allows the race director to control the use of the safety car, which in our determination includes its deployment and withdrawal. Yeah. The race director can deploy and he can withdraw that safety car. That's a valid statement. Okay. But once he's deployed it, he's still got to carry out the regulations that apply to it. Okay, you can't ignore the regulations that apply to it once you've deployed it. And then once you've actually carried those regulations out, he can then, at his discretion, withdraw it. So there you go. That's all right. But you've missed out here. You can't ignore it. The Article 48.12 may not have been applied fully. Well, it categorically was not applied correctly. Although it was not applied, may not have been applied fully. What's your word in there? It categorically, nothing to do with may, because when you say may, it may or it may not. It could or it couldn't. It categorically wasn't. Black and white. Binary. Is or isn't. It wasn't applied correctly in relation to the safety car returning to the pits at the end of the following lap. Article 48.13 overrides that. No, it doesn't. So this is utter bollocks. And once the message safety car in this lap has been displayed, it is mandatory to withdraw the safety car at the end of that lap. And that's utter bollocks as well. No mention here of the 3 cars that weren't released, 2 of them being in the way of third place Sainz being able to challenge for second place Verstappen. No mention of that. Just may not have been applied fully. Okay. And in relation to returning to the pits at the end of the following lap, which would dictate a safety car finish, no mention of that. This idea of an overriding regulation, which it doesn't override in any way because you cannot not carry out 48.12. Okay. And you cannot then, having not carried it out, do anything else. Until you've carried it out, you can't withdraw the safety car. And it wasn't carried out. So there's no notion whatsoever of 48.13 overriding. And then they've come up with this idea of it being mandatory to withdraw the safety car. Once you've displayed safety car in this lap, it is mandatory to withdraw the safety car. No, it's not. As in the example I've already given. if a further incident then happens. So you've made the decision, we're now safe, we're good to go, give the notice, safety car in this lap. Okay, so all the drivers, the note comes on the TV screen for all us people watching the sport. Safety car in this lap. Brundle goes, oh, and it's safety car in this lap. Right. Oh, now what? Some other prick span and is in the gravel. Oh, shit. That's going to mean that this safety car incident has got to carry on until that one's recovered. Oh, it's mandatory to withdraw it now. No, it's not mandatory, is it? It's not mandatory. It's not in any way mandatory, which is what they've displayed in this report, this fraudulent report. Again, you would think a King's Counsel legal expert would be able to work that out. No, that notwithstanding Mercedes' request that the stewards remediate this matter by amending the classification to reflect the positions at the end of the penultimate lap. No, it's not the positions at the end of the penultimate lap, because the penultimate lap is the one before the last lap, okay, which is the end of lap 57. The rules were broken on lap 57, making lap 57 invalid. Okay, so that is an invalid request. The rules are broken on lap 57, invalid lap. The last point in time, the last completed lap where it was a valid race, where the rules weren't broken, was the end of lap 56. That is your declared result. According to the stewards, though, this is a step that the stewards believe is effectively shortening the race retrospectively and hence not appropriate. Well, what's not appropriate is ending that race in an invalid manner. Restarting that race in an invalid restart condition makes whatever took place after that invalid restart invalid. So you cannot allow that to stand. What you got was 56 laps of a 58 lap race that were valid. And the stewards think that it's inappropriate. It's not appropriate to declare a race result of 56 valid laps, but thinks it's appropriate that the invalid situation created by the invalid application of the rules, creating an invalid ending, is the appropriate ending. That's what these learned stewards would like to present us. Accordingly, the protest is dismissed and that protest deposit is not refunded. Competitors are reminded they have the right to appeal to the Court of Appeal or the High Court. You know, we've got a similar process here in the UK. You got to pay your money though. You got to pay your money to appeal corrupt judges in this country. But we'll get there. We'll get there. And there'll be prison sentences. Well, there should be. Anyway, competitors are reminded that they have the right to appeal certain decisions of the stewards in accordance with Article 15 of the FIA International Sporting Code and Chapter 4 of the FIA Judicial and Disciplinary Rules within the applicable time limits. Now, one of the things that should be concerning to everybody, but don't you worry your little heads, is the FIA has its own court, has its own independent legal system, its own judges. Can you tell me what other sports you're aware of have their own court system and judges? Strange. Anyway, don't you worry your little heads about that one. And then it just signed off by the stewards. Totally corrupt. The fact that it's all a facade. The whole thing is a facade. Remember, as I said right at the start, the appeal was Mercedes appealing to the governing body that you've not applied the rules correctly. The governing body, in the form of the stewards, their first action was to summon Red Bull. Red Bull got nothing to do with this. Having summoned Red Bull are then listed as being there as an interested party. Or is this the Red Bull owners that are just there, having summoned the Red Bull team in Horner and Wheatley and Newey? Is the interested party the actual owners of Red Bull? Who knows? Who knows? But then Red Bull are afforded the time to make an argument. Go away for 40 minutes and you construct your right. There's nothing to do with you. To consider its responses in further detail. And then Red Bull. Arguments in defence. What are Red Bull defending? Red Bull, the allegation isn't being made against Red Bull. Why are they defending? They're not there to defend, are they? What's that all about? All a facade. Toto Wolff not being there. Instead, sending in this guy, this expert. This expert losing this appeal. Now me, I'm no expert, okay? I'm not a learned lawyer, okay? We've all got certificates. We've all got various qualifications in various things in this world, okay? But I've not been to judge school. I've not got a master's degree in judgery or a doctorate in judgery or anything like that. My qualifications, my field of expertise are something different. Or maybe I haven't got a field of expertise. Maybe I'm just the jack of all trades and the master of none. Who knows? Who knows? But obviously, not being such an esteemed individual as Paul Harris, I don't know the law as much. But I can identify that this is a load of bollocks. This is an absolute fraud. So what's going on? If I can break it down like that, and you've got a King's Counsel barrister who is projected to us all as being this guy here, Paul is Lawyer Barrister of the Year 2021. Lawyer Barrister of the Year, the best that we can do as a lawyer barrister. And he's Lawyer Barrister of the Year. Tough and extremely well prepared in court. If you want him to go to battle for a client, he's fantastic. And he lost. He lost that. Rather strange. You see, if the courts aren't corrupt, what this video has just presented will not lose. There's a reason it will not lose, and the reason it will not lose is because it can't lose. Okay, because everything I say is grounded in facts and evidence. Some things are binary. They are what they are. There's right and there is wrong. There's no grey area, okay? And there's no what do you think in the comment section. And if a judge isn't corrupt, and there are corrupt judges out there, I guarantee you there are judges that are corrupt. But if you get a judge which is not corrupt, what is presented in this video demonstrates fully that this Steward's appeal was a contrivance, an absolute contrivance which had no validity whatsoever. So if that isn't valid, what is? What is? And the fact is, nothing was. It was all a contrivance. And everything you've been presented about the situation since by all forms of media were all complicit. All complicit with feeding you the bullshit narrative of this situation, which was entirely wrong. Entirely wrong. We're going to move on to the FIA's own report into the situation. Their so-called investigation into the situation, which lasted 3 months, that they dropped on the eve of the seasoning opening 2022 Grand Prix in the hope that it'd all go away. Move on already. You're now excited again, smooth brains, because it's the new season. Lewis has moved on. Everybody moved on. You're all excited. We've got a much bigger audience. We can charge much more money for our advertising opportunities. The show is making more money now. All teams are benefiting. Move on now. And by the way, here's our report into it. So we're going to analyse that report and show you exactly what a load of bollocks that is too. So thank you for your time. If you're going to choose a career in law, don't be a corrupt bastard. Do it for the right reasons. Go into law because you care about the difference between right and wrong and that you stand for justice. Okay? Don't do it just because, oh, lawyers make lots of money and I will just be happy to create an argument for somebody as long as they are paying me. I don't give a shit whether it's right, whether it's ethical or not. I just care about making money. Because there's a significant proportion of them within that corrupt system that is entirely their motive. They don't care about justice. And when they operate in what should be the justice industry, that's a problem when you've got operators that do not care about justice. They care about money. That's an industry to cream money, where the industry shouldn't be an industry, it should be a service to obtain justice when injustices have taken place. And that is quite simple to achieve. Identify the problem, identify the solutions. Put into place the action which is going to lead to those solutions. Or what can be best in that situation, using the notion of law. They don't do that. They get you to play the 3-year, 4-year long back and forth, where you are told that you won't understand this. You need to recruit a legal expert to advocate, to vocate for you on your behalf, because you won't be able to understand this. You won't be able to understand the legal games and the legal trickery that we get up to whilst playing the back and forth game out for 3 or 4 years and creaming millions of pounds out of it. Not solving the situation, not achieving justice. But it works for some, doesn't it? Works for this lad here. Works for this lad here. But he's a man of integrity, especially when he wears his cape and his wig and he's a King's Counsel barrister, an expert of the law, Demonstrated his expertise there, or was just playing his role in the facade, wasn't he? Playing his role in the facade, the smooth brains won't understand. And if the lawyers can't understand it, nobody's going to bring a legal case against F1, are they? Nobody's going to bring a legal case against F1, are they? Oh no, that could never happen, could it? That could never happen. Till next time.